Hello and welcome to iGCSE Success. If you're new here, a big hello to you. I'm an English teacher and I post content here on YouTube to prepare students for their Cambridge First Language English exam. And if that sounds interesting to you, you can always subscribe because we are on the road to 1000. You know when you do something and instantly regret it? That was kind of one of those moments. Serious hat on. If you are struggling with first language English, be sure to check out the videos on my channel because I break down a number of the core skills needed to succeed with first language English. So let's get on with today's video. Now, a somewhat perennial question I seem to get on this channel is, how do I improve my writer's effect responses? And of course, how do I pick the 3 best images? How do I analyze? How do I kind of get all of that information together and put it together in one succinct response? So I thought I'd do a mini series looking yet again at the writer's effect question, and we are going to be looking at the new, yes I said it, the new May-June 2020 papers, the papers that quite a lot of you were due to sit. Well, that's actually a lie because most year 11s are now in year 12 and I'm sure they have no interest in watching my videos. However, they are the most recent FLE papers. I have 3 new 2020 papers lined up, and in today's video I am going to be taking you through the writer's effect question to one of those papers. I will be simply reading both paragraphs you are directed to, and I will be discussing these paragraphs, highlighting, annotating, and showing you the thought process you kind of need to be going through. And in part 2 I will show you how to put all of these ideas together in a response. So let's get to it. Hi guys, so what you are looking at now is the question paper from one of the May-June 2020 series. I will link this paper, the insert and the mark scheme in the description box below should you wish to have a go at this question or the whole paper for that matter. But I'm just going to start by reading the question. So reread paragraphs 1 and 12. Paragraph 1 begins lost in the shadows and is about what Clay sees and feels as he climbs the ladder. Paragraph 12 begins inside imagine and describes the inside of the bookstore. Now there's a few important things to note here, and I don't think necessarily I've made it entirely clear in my previous videos. And that is to, of course, pay attention to the paragraphs you are directed to. So it might be sensible to highlight those paragraphs. But what is often overlooked is the context that you are given, which comes after the quotation. So after Lost in the Shadows, you are told that that paragraph will focus on what Clay sees and feels as he climbs the ladder. So of course, that is what your writer's effect response is going to focus on. And the same thing applies for paragraph 12. It says, describes the inside of the bookstore. So you know that your second writer's effect paragraph is going to focus on the inside of the bookstore and what it looks like. And of course, the wording for the question doesn't change, but just for the purpose of this video, and if you are new to the writer's effect question, I'm just going to read it out. So explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. So you should end up with 2 separate paragraphs, 3 quotations in each, and your primary focus is the writer's use of imagery, although credit is given to stylistic features as long as they link to meaning. And if you have seen my previous videos looking at the writer's effect question, you'll know that I advise my students to approach this question using a 5-step method. And I will go through this in part 2. Then of course you are required to write 200 to 300 words. Invariably, I find my students anyway often go over the word count. Don't worry too much. Just be careful in terms of how long you spend on this question. I think 30 minutes is absolutely fine, and 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. Okay, so what I've done is just copy and pasted the first paragraph you are directed to just on a Word doc, just so I can highlight easily and add annotations towards the bottom. I will eventually invest in some device which allows me to use a stylus. It is coming, guys, I promise. So let's take a read, because of course the first step is always understanding. So text C is titled Mr. Penninbruss, I think that's how you pronounce it, 24-hour bookstore, and we're given a little bit of context. So the narrator Clay is young and talented but struggling to find a new job. After months of searching, including walking the streets each day looking for advertisements in shop windows, he finds just one job to apply for. And paragraph 1 reads, "Lost in the shadows of the shelves, I almost fall off the ladder. I'm exactly halfway up. The floor of the bookstore is far below, the surface of a planet I've left behind. The tops of the shelves loom high above. It's dark up there. Books are huddled together, not letting any light through. The air might be thinner. I think I see a bat. I'm holding on for dear life. One hand on the ladder, the other on the shelf. Fingers pressed white." You know what I said in my previous videos about Cambridge being notorious for selecting slightly quirky, odd text? This quite clearly is going to be another one. So once you have read the text and you feel you understand it, I always advise my students to think straight away about what the writer is trying to achieve. What is the overall effect of the language? And most of them write that up the top. And I've just put OE for the overall effect. Hopefully you can see that the narrator Clay, he seems almost isolated and certainly completely out of place with his surroundings, the bookstore, and to some degree it seems quite a threatening place. I don't know, guys, maybe he's had some serious issues with books as a child or something, I don't know. So part 2 will be coming very soon, and I will go through the sort of 5 steps that I recommend my students take when putting their response together. But the opening sentence never changes, and that is the overall effect of the language creates an image of. So I'm just going to put all of the ideas I said before in one sentence. And apologies if you can hear me typing, it is a little bit low rent. I will get a stylus, I promise. So let's put the overall effect of the language creates an image of the narrator feeling, let's put both isolated and let's put an almost, whoop, can't type today, and almost threatened being in, let's put unfamiliar surroundings. So the things that I'm going to be highlighting and analysing, annotating, etc., they are all very much going to link to this idea of Clay feeling isolated, feeling a little bit lost, feeling, I guess, somewhat threatened. And although you are only required to find 3 images for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to highlight all of the powerful images I can find. So lost in the shadows of the shells, we can definitely say something pertinent about that. The surface of the planet I've left behind is certainly a powerful image. The tops of the shells loom high above, particularly that verb loom. So I'll analyse that one. Let's do the fact that the books are huddled together. Let's also highlight the fact that he's holding on for dear life. Gosh, guys, he's got some fear of bookstores. And lastly, let's look at the fact that his fingers are pressed white. There we go. So with the writer's effect question, the focus is always how. Remember when we read any, literary text, we form ideas, we form opinions, and those ideas and opinions come from the writer's use of language. Okay, so they craft their language in a particular way for effect. And it's your job as students to explain how writers have achieved such effects. So the first thing we learn is that Clay, our narrator, is lost in the shadows of the shelves. Think about what word stands out in that opening. Hopefully, the noun shadows stands out, but also that verb lost. So I'm just going to highlight those two words. Now that verb lost almost creates this sense of, in many ways, entrapment. It's incredibly unwelcoming, and because there are so many shelves, there are so many books, there's also this sense of the environment being terribly claustrophobic. And of course, if you were doing this question for real, you would simply highlight these quotations and make some quick annotations. I think what is most interesting is the writer's use of that noun shadows. Now think about what shadows symbolize, the connotations of shadows. Hopefully you'll come to the conclusion that shadows can sometimes be the source of evil. Perhaps, maybe, perhaps, just perhaps, guys, something is lurking in the darkness. So what we've done there, we have made a number of inferences and we have looked at different shades of meaning, and that's really how you are going to get those top marks. Now, of course, our narrator Clay is so high up this ladder, he describes that it's almost like leaving the surface of a planet I've left behind. I just love this image. So, of course, what is being emphasized here is how unfamiliar his surroundings are. The fact that his surroundings are so unfamiliar, you might also infer that perhaps it's somewhat intimidating. You might also go as far to say that Clay is so far up this ladder, he's so high, that it's almost as if he is in outer space and very much unable to return. That's pretty scary. Now the next quote reads, "The tops of the shelves loom high above." What word for you is particularly powerful? I'll give you a clue, it's a verb. I just had to stop the video because my cats were going crazy and I've completely forgotten what I was talking about. I'm going to assume it was that verb loom. So I'm just going to highlight that in green. Now, if someone looms over you or something looms over you, hopefully you can see that it's quite an intimidating action, quite unsettling. And we've said earlier on that there seems to be almost something evil about this bookstore. And again, you may well interpret this in a completely different way. That is absolutely fine, but that is the beauty of this question. It very much invites you to give your own opinions, give your own analysis. But certainly for me, I find that verb quite unsettling in its use. Perhaps there's also a sense of our narrator Clay being watched. What is he being watched by? Is it perhaps some malevolent force, or maybe I'm just being a little bit over the top? So the next quotation is also quite interesting. We learn that the books are huddled together. What word stands out in this sentence? Hopefully you can see that the verb huddled is perhaps quite unusual in its use. Why do people huddle together? Well, they do that when they are frightened or perhaps cold. My cat is very interested in what I'm doing. So really, with this paper, what you need to start doing is piecing everything together. The darkness, the height, these aspects are very much a focus. Why would the books be huddling together? Maybe, just maybe, they are somewhat frightened. Are the books wanting to protect each other? Protect each other from what? Maybe the darkness. Then the next image is of Clay holding on for dear life. Of course, we have an idiom here. And think about what that idiom suggests. Hopefully you can see that the writer perhaps is trying to create this palpable sense of danger. We can really feel how Clay is almost terrified about being up the ladder. Some may argue that he should just come down and maybe just leave the bookstore whilst he's still alive. Some may also read this as being somewhat, I guess, hyperbolic, and it may be quite a humorous image for some. What's that German word I'm thinking of? Schadenfreude, where you get pleasure out of people's pain. But whatever the case, clearly this ladder is incredibly... I can't type, I can't spell tonight. Sorry guys, it's Friday. I'm back at school. It's been a long week. He's clearly in this quite precarious situation. The ladder is perhaps very likely to fall. Fingers crossed it doesn't. And the last image to paragraph 1 I'm going to look at is the fact that Clay's fingers are pressed white. Why would the writer be using that image? What does it show? Well, it shows a couple of things actually. Clearly it's emphasizing how high up Clay is. It's also showing how tight his grip is, so much so that the blood has drained from his fingers. So again, very much in this sort of threatening environment, this threatening situation. So I'm just going to put a few notes here. So blood drained due to a tight grip, threatening environment. And I'm just going to put fear is, let's use palpable again. He's clearly quite scared. Is he scared of books? Is he scared of heights? Who knows?